there's going to be many things that I talk about in this small talk. Here's a list of some of these things right here. And I would like to add before I get started that you will get a recording of this, which will be posted on our YouTube channel so that you can refer to it after the conference as well. So again, just sit back, listen to what my journey has been in the last few years about integrating technology into language learning classroom. So these are the things that I'll be talking about today. I don't want to go into detail because the detail will be given to you as I, you know, get into my talk. But I think what's important here is taking those things that I just showed you and putting that into context and putting into a didactical and pedagogical context. I have given many talks at many conferences, either face to face or online over the past 10 years. Everybody who knows me knows that I always promote the idea of constructivist principles to a language learning and teaching. And I want to just kind of simplify that and say that these are the four things that I think are important when it comes to constructivist teaching and learning, and that is cognitive apprenticeship. And if you don't know what some of these terms are, I challenge you to Google them because these are the things that a constructivist teacher is doing in the classroom. Uh, Number two is knowledge construction and co-construction, and that learners are seen as creators of content, not always the teacher. Learning is about doing, and how much is the teacher doing and how much is the student doing. We always want to make sure if you're a constructivist teacher that the students are doing more than the teacher, okay? And we all hope as teachers that we eventually lead our students by motivating them directly or indirectly to become self-directed learners. And that's one of the principles integrated into constructivist teaching and learning. And I always like to even break that down a little bit further. And, I'm only going to talk about four domains within, okay, constructivist teaching, and that's design, delivery, methodology, and skills development. Well, I can get really deep into that. And I just want to invite all of our listeners today to follow me on social media where I write articles about all these things that I talk about. So you can get some follow up on these things, detailed articles with links so that you can research and learn for yourself on that self-directed CPD journey. You will find all of the things that you see here in yellow on my LinkedIn site. Wonderful articles to help you, okay? But remember, it's about design, it's about delivery, it's about methodology, and it's about skills development. Well, I want to start by asking you this true and false statement. Technology and artificial intelligence is part of our daily lives at home, at work, at school. Is that true or false? I would be very surprised if you said false because it is true. And we know that. Okay. And I want you to take one step deeper there and based upon and really think about it, based upon your consumer behavior, what how many times do you look at your smartphone a day? And you can check that, okay, on your iPhone, and you can check how long you look at it, okay, because that shows how we act towards technology and how technology is integrated into our daily lives at home, at work, and school. And the other question that I have here is how many things can you identify that connect you to technology and artificial intelligence at home, at work, and at school? I asked myself that question. And when I did, I came up with some unbelievable things that I started really just looking at it. And I came up with this graphic facilitator because I wanted to, I really believe in graphic facilitation. And I just asked myself the question, how many things am I connected to? How is it part of my life? And we can see here, it's very much a part of our lives. It's part of everything that we do at work and at school and our own personal learning journey, and also how we deal with money, how we shop, our travel, working from home, our smartphones, and all the apps that we have on them, and artificial intelligence. So we are connected to that. So if we are, and we know that our learners are, I also have another question here. Uh, I was the owner of 5 different schools, and every time people come in for an interview, I send them, to be fair, uh, some questions so that they can be ready to sit down and have an interview. Today, the interviews are all online. The first question I ask them is, what technology do you integrate into your classroom practice? I want to know. And how do you use technology into your classroom practice? How do when you're doing it, not only what you use, but how do you use it? And the third thing I ask is, what technology do your learners use? Do they know that? Uh, what I'm really asking them is, what's your TPAC? A lot of teachers don't know what TPAC is, and that's why I send them the questions, to be fair, to give them enough time to research it, to know how to answer that question. TPAC is the acronym for Technology Integration into Learning, Pedagogical Approaches and Methodology into Learning and Content Knowledge. And that's important at a job interview, to be able to answer these 4 questions. Well, the one question is, how do I know what um, technology my learners are using? I ask them, okay? And I use technology to do it. I send them a link to a Mentimeter that has many different slides for them to choose and give me the information I need before I sit down with them, because I want to know exactly how they use technology, what apps they use, where are they at when it comes to integrating technology and apps into their language learning experience. It only takes about 5 minutes to do that. I get the results. And once I get those results, I start thinking about how I'm going to put that class together. And I use another graphic facilitator. And here is the graphic facilitator. I just started my new semesters this year, and I always update these right here. I'm not going to go into every single one of these things, not right now, but I just want to say I send that to them. They have it. And our first class is always about how I'm going to use these technology and artificial intelligence in their language learning experience, and show them how I do it, and give them examples, and we play with it at our first and second session, so that we're on the same level playing field when it comes to technology and the integration of technology into their language learning experience. Well, let's get into that. Let's dive into what I'm really talking about. Remember that the tools that I'm presenting here are based on my personal experience as a constructivist teacher in the language learning classroom, which are based on constructivist principles of learning and teaching. One more time: cognitive apprenticeship, knowledge construction and knowledge co-construction, learners as the creators of content, and self-directed learning. Well, let's deal with the elephant in the room right away, and that is artificial intelligence platforms. I gave a talk about whether artificial intelligence is our friend or our foe, and maybe people are in one camp or the other, maybe in between, in some gray area, but I'm not going to go into all the details about it. What artificial intelligence platform are you using? How are you using it uh, to improve your uh, classroom practice? And how are your students using it? I want to say here that it is important to say that we're biased when it comes to artificial intelligence. When we start playing around, and we have our favorites, we have some that we don't like. I started with ChatGPT, then started using Gemini, used Copilot a lot. I really loved Copilot, the way all the functions. That has changed. So I'm at Perplexity now. I love it. It's just so useful. Had to learn how to work with that platform. So from all of these, my only thing that I want to say here is play with them, learn how to use them, And hopefully you get to Perplexity because it's one that I highly recommend. Well, let's look at quizzing. I use Kahoot, Quizlet, Mentimeter, and I use all of these in the classroom, but not maybe how some teachers use them because it's not my job to create Kahoot for students. I let them do it because I'm a constructivist teacher. And I want them to show me, yes, they want to use the technology, but it's about language learning. And so I let them create the quizzes and let them play. And I'm just sit back and watch them because they're learning. They're really improving their vocabulary. But I don't create the quizzes. They do. And they play with each other. So that's sort of the gamification of language learning. Quizlet, definitely use that a lot, okay? But they create the vocabulary. They create the games and we play with each other, okay? I'm just a little kid playing with them and uh, can't always win, okay? Sometimes I don't play because I might win and I want them to win. I want them to feel uh good about themselves, but I let them create that. Mentimeter is very important for me as far as assessment is concerned, and I use Mentimeter for exit tickets in the classroom, little quizzes. I need some formative feedback from my students. They, I teach them how to do it, and eventually they create the formative assessment. They know how to do it, and I don't have to put a lot of pressure on myself because, again, that's constructivist, the integration of constructivist principles into language learning. Uh, in here, they're the ones using Kahoot. They're the ones who create the quizzes. They create the quizzes and flashcards on Quizlet, and they create the formative assessment because I need that information. Uh, Assessment, I want to say right here, we're back at AI, and I use AI to create rubrics because I need that. When I do lesson planning and create learning cycles that are very detailed, I need AI to do that. Before, it took me so long to do it. I can finish creating a rubric usually in about 30 minutes now with AI. Again, I suggest Perplexity. Uh, Podcast is a great way to learn. I integrate podcast because this is really important. Uh, Audacity, Podbean, and Spotify. I can't say that I have a favorite here other than I use Spotify more than the others because that's what my students got me to start doing. And now it's just become a habit. So I suggest Spotify because I use it a lot. And what skills are they really learning? Listening, reading, speaking, a lot of different things that they're doing when we're integrating podcast into the language learning experience. Uh, Audio recording, very important. There, Lynn will be talking about her app that she created in Edling Speak. Vakuro was how I started, but then I realized, wait a minute, all my students have a smartphone. They have a voice function there, and I started using the voice function in the telephone to get students to start speaking, sending me reading things, working on their pronunciation, and of course, always doing reviews and summaries of all the classes that we have because WhatsApp has a voice function. So are you using the voice function of the smartphone with your students, and how are you using it? Uh, Audio visual. I'm just going to say right here, YouTube is the best teacher in the world. It's the best teacher assistant that any teacher could have. So here is, how are you using YouTube to create lesson plans and really integrate all the functions of YouTube into a very positive, interactive language learning experience, especially if you're doing flipped learning. Uh, Video creation, those students have a phone. And how are they using that phone to create video? All my students who are high school students taught me how to create TikToks. And then I realized, oh my God, this is fun, but I need to be thinking about how I'm going to use that for language learning. And they taught me how to edit those videos. And they taught me how to edit those videos with Microsoft Clipchamp. So I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I learned that from my students and they love it. They're learning. And as long as they're learning and improving and developing their language, because I got to try to get my students to C1 level, high school students, I have to say they love using all of this kind of technology. They have a smartphone. How are you using that smartphone to get your students such great videos? Online collaboration, there's so many things out there. I have to use Moodle in some of the situations because I work at a university, but I also use Google Workspace, I use Microsoft Teams, and I use Zoom. But I've just come to like Google Workspace. It's so much easier. I have a paid account, but you can still use it without a paid account as long as you have a Google account. I highly recommend it. It's just a great way to share files and collaborate with your students. Uh, it's just my recommendation because I have to say I started using it during Corona and haven't stopped. And my students use it very effectively. So if it works, why reinvent the wheel? Communication, I'm going to tell you here that it's really important to collaborate with to get our students to collaborate with one another. Uh, I can't imagine not using WhatsApp anymore. All my groups have a WhatsApp group. They communicate with each other in real time. They tell me when they're going to be late, when they're not going to be there. I know when they're sick, just a lot. I share information with them that I need to get to them really quick. But during Corona, one of my students taught me how to use spatial chat. I love it. And they loved it as well too. So I've never quit using that because I think it's a great way and another way to get students to collaborate with one another. There are free versions. Go to the internet and play with spatial chat with your groups. You see how that works. Okay. I'm not going to go too much into detail because I really like it. But in reality, I do a lot of project-based learning, and I had to find a platform that was going to be effective for me. And because Slack does offer free accounts to education institutions, schools, organizations, I have free accounts there. And all my students who are working with me in project-based learning uh, do use Slack. And I can't imagine doing project-based learning without it. Content creation, well, everybody knows about PowerPoint and now, Canvas, everybody's using that as well too. My students use those things. Not a lot of people know about PechaKucha, but if you've got really advanced students and you've got a large group, I highly suggest using PechaKucha because it's timed. And find out what PechaKucha is because it's just a great way to deal with large groups because all the presentations are timed. But PechaKucha is just nothing but PowerPoint. And it's just another name for PowerPoint. It's a system. It's a format. And so find out about PechaKucha. I got to do a lot of brainstorming with my students, and I love Miro. Uh, I do a lot of online learning, and I highly suggest if you're going to do brainstorming, Miro is the place to go because that's where if you're a constructivist teacher and students should be creators of content. Well, this is where content starts with brainstorming, vocabulary building, ideation, all those things that can happen on Moreau. I highly recommend it. Uh, you know, we're at the age now that yes, there's the testing world and assessment is out. We know we have to assess our students. It was one of my students who said she didn't want to do a test the way it was. She wanted to do something different. I let her say, well, okay, I'll listen to you. Tell me what you want because I told her I do believe in alternative assessment. And I explained it to her, and then she said, okay. She goes, I want to write a book. I want to write a digital book. And I let her do it. I just guided her, and actually, she was guiding me. Uh, she taught me how to use the program designer. Uh, we looked at book creator, we looked at if that was going to be something she liked. We looked at Lulu. Uh, but in the end, we both decided for designer. And once I started to learn how to use it and watched her do it, and that she taught the other students to do it, the whole class wrote their own book. So I definitely say if you believe in alternative assessment and you feel that writing an ebook for your students want to write an ebook, definitely use this program. By the way, my student published her book and made over €1,000 in just the first month that it was published on Amazon. So going beyond the test, alternative assessment, and reality that what they create can be something fantastic. Working with images, I have to say here that there's many image creators here, uh, but I played around. I know how to use all of those things, Canva, ChatGPT, Google Images, and Gemini, but and Word. But there's a site called Upsplash that I highly recommend. Why reinvent the wheel? There are so many different images that you can use for your presentations, for students to create booklets, pamphlets, books, ebooks, everything. When they're making presentations with PowerPoint or Pechakucha, I tell my students, use Upsplash, and I suggest it to you as well. Uh, we need to also work with graphic facilitation. And that means I use infographics. And one of the classes that I teach, I need to teach statistics and numbers and dates and things. And infograph is a great way to teach that. And I started with Looka, and then I used Lucid Charts and PicMonkey and MindMaster for mind maps as well too for graphic facilitation. But in the end, I wind up with Lucid Charts because I think that's a great way to integrate technology and an app uh, into the language learning experience by getting our students to create infographics. Uh, there's no way to get around lesson plans and lesson planning. And there's just so many great sites out there that have ready-made lesson plans, because I do believe that teachers should have that skill. Uh, but let's face reality too. There's just sometimes when we don't have enough time to create a lesson plan, and we got to find something that's going to help us to do this class, and we got to know what sites to go to. These are all wonderful sites. I use every single one of them, but I'm hooked on one here that I would highly recommend, and I have a reason why. Fluentize is a great site to go to. They have a lot of free lesson plans. Yes, it's a paid platform as well, if you really like it. But I sat down with the owner of this uh, internet site, and I expressed to him what a teacher really needs, and how I could, if he could just help me and change the site, because teachers, integrate learning. And what about teachers who are teaching online to students who only have a telephone? Uh, Jake accommodated me, and it is just a wonderful site. Go there to see how he puts those lessons together, how he uses YouTube, and how he uses learning. You would be very surprised. So again, they're all wonderful sites that have great content. Start at Fluentize, and by going there, you'll learn how to put a lesson together for your future lesson planning. I wrote an article about artificial intelligence and lesson plan generators. You can find that article on LinkedIn. It's too detailed to go into here, but I have to say that of all of these right here, I I can't say I recommend one over the other because I use all of them. Okay. But I do have to say that the new kid on the block, Note Lab, that's pretty good. Okay. And I started with Twee, which is number 6 on the list. You can get links to all of these sites from my LinkedIn article that I wrote about lesson planning with artificial intelligence. This is a great way to get started on integrating artificial intelligence by starting with lesson plans going to Fluentize, seeing how they put the lesson plans together, using that as a model, and then going to artificial intelligence and trying to replicate the models that you see on Fluentize. A great way to start putting lesson plans together. Well, as teachers, we have to research a lot of different content and make sure. Now, I know there's a lot of people who say they don't like Wikipedia, but I do, and there's a reason why. And that's because it has different languages. I deal with international students. English is not their mother language, and understandability is very important for them to have success in creating the task or coming completing the tasks that are given to them. So I send them an article, and they can click German or Dutch or Spanish or whatever language they have as a mother language, and read the article in their mother language, because for me it's more important that they understand the concepts that we're dealing with. So it's just an instant translator. That's why I like it. But there is Google Scholar, and I do use it a lot. And there is ResearchGate, which I use it a lot. I mean, there's not a week that goes by that I don't use ResearchGate. But if you're lost for uh, trying to find some internet sites that really will help you, go to Albert, where they have a wonderful platform with 75 educational websites for teachers, and everything about didactical, pedagogical themes that will help you to develop yourself as a teacher and improve your classroom practice. Uh, there's people who say, I don't use Facebook, I don't use Threads, whatever. I don't like Meta because it's owned by Mark Zuckerberg, but they have WhatsApp. That I don't understand, because if they have WhatsApp, Mark Zuckerberg, if they use Instagram, Mark Zuckerberg's going to know everything about you. But, and I do use WhatsApp. Okay, I don't use Instagram that much, and I'm not really big on Instagram. I do post some things, pictures of my dog sometimes. Uh, but why do I recommend LinkedIn? I've got to get my students to start creating professional profiles of themselves for uh, their future, for going to college, going to universities, applying for apprenticeships, applying for practical positions at companies, practica, applying for all these different things. And I have to say, this is really important. That's why I use LinkedIn and recommend teachers to use LinkedIn in their classrooms. Vocabulary building. I have to say that vocabulary building is sort of a complicated thing here, okay? And I do suggest Magoosh as, because it's one of my favorites from. Now, this was a survey that was done on the internet with a group of teachers. These were the things that a group of teachers recommended. And yes, I use Magoosh and tell my students to have that on their telephone, but I go back to Quizlet because I think Quizlet is one of the greatest vocabulary builders, and it's programmable to meet the needs of your learners. So definitely use Quizlet to help your students improve their vocabulary. Let's wrap it up, people. And I'm going to ask you a question. I just gave you a lot of my favorite things that I use in the classroom. Again, you see that graphic facilitator that I send to my students? What is your graphic facilitator going to look like? When you sit down with your students and hear what they have to say about how they integrate artificial intelligence and technology into their language learning experience, how are you going to work with them? And what are your favorites? And how are you going to show them how you use it and why you use it? Again, this is something that I update all the time, and different groups have different graphic facilitators. What you're looking at here is for a group of my university first and second semester students. Uh, and they use all of these right here. And many of those they taught me how to use. So be open to reverse mentoring. Listen to your students. What are they doing? How are they doing it? And maybe you can improve your classroom practice by listening to them. I ask people to follow me on social media. I have articles about everything that I've talked about on Facebook. I don't share private things on social media because I use my social media microblogs to connect with teachers all over the world. So again, you can find articles there that will help you on your self-directed professional development journey. Uh, this is what I think is important. I think that's the way I share my experience with teachers all over the world. So you're welcome to follow me there where you can find many different articles about what I talked about today. And please go to Webinars for English Teachers, a Facebook group where Mo, Blanca, and I, and many others, Lynn, many of the people who you will be seeing today, share all free webinars that are available for you to go to and listen to and to help you improve your classroom practice. There's just so many things out there for free. The days of not uh, doing CPD, I think are over when there's so many different possibilities, especially webinars for English teachers.